Hi everyone, thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. Thank you. This video is an aggregate of 3 short videos that I posted quite a while back, and they relate very specifically to what you saw in yesterday's video, namely Trump's axis Hollywood T-square, which is made by Eris, Neptune, and Mercury. And in these videos you will see the story of an incident that is rumored to have happened in late 2013, at which time the astrology is absolutely remarkable in reflecting the very strong suspicion that something did happen then, something along those lines, whether or not it was specifically the PP incident or whatever else. Something of that nature almost certainly took place because of the astrology. And the rule in this case, if you're wondering how the astrology works, although you'll see it explained in the upcoming video Coalition, is if you see a single planet reflecting something, well, that's good. That's one piece of evidence. But then if you see 2, the suspicion increases. And if you start to see more factors all pointing in the same direction, you're essentially making a very strong case. Enjoy. In astrology, you are essentially looking for meaningful coincidence. Planets at any point in time that seem to connect to a person's original planet positions in a way that reflects what is happening and or what is likely to happen next. So, it was November 8th, 2013, and verifiable records show that Trump landed in Moscow around 3 p.m., but then, based on information presented in the famous/infamous Christopher Steele dossier of 2016, Trump is said to have found his way into a hotel suite at evening time, likely around 10 or 11 p.m. Apparently, it was the very same hotel suite that had been used by Michelle and Barack Obama, and this brings us to the gist of the story. Trump either hired or was somehow connected with Moscow hookers who, according to sources, then proceeded to urinate on the bed while he watched. First, an aside to mention that Trump's ex-lawyer fixer, Michael Cohen, who from 2018 onward, and most especially post-election 2020, has become one of his key and most vocal of enemies, says there is no PP tape, meaning he's certain that nothing like that would ever be recorded. Maybe, but he's not quite as definite about whether or not the event took place. And here is where, from my vantage point, if something along the lines described in the Steele dossier didn't happen, then the astrology is a mightily suspicious contradiction. I would ask you to take a good long look at this and tell me what you think. Evening time in Moscow on that fated November 8th features a very tight and very rare square between the 2 outer planets, Uranus and Pluto. And wouldn't you know it, there they be, exactly squaring Mercury by Uranus from the 9th sign and exactly opposing the same Mercury by Pluto from the 6th. This means they are activating the key planet in the infamous axis Hollywood T-square that it makes with natal Neptune and Eris. That alone is enough for most astrologers to say, wow, that is very strangely symbolic, isn't it? A scene like this fits into Pluto action very neatly, though I realize I'm using opposite terms for effect, since in fact Pluto is the down and dirty planet, so there isn't much that is neat about it. But you know what I'm getting at, right? And Uranus is famous for showing up when you're doing something completely against conventional rules and you're in no way going to be bound by convention. On the, let us call it, downside or immature side, it loves to rebel, but I can tell you that it can also be quite kinky. And of course, transits tell you where they are at some point, but always look back to the beginning to get to the root information. And there you see a rising Pluto in Leo, which points to the fun of romance/fun/sex and domination games, and Uranus is next to the Sun and opposite the Moon, so its qualities are constantly seeking expression, and without a doubt, I often think that all by itself it describes the Donald to a T. Rebellious, contrarian, unpredictable, irascible. A kind of megalomaniac independence that goes so far it turns dangerous. Notice Uranus is transiting through the ninth of foreign countries. So these two planetary players, Uranus and Pluto, both with enormous long orbits of 84 and 250 years respectively, just happen to be precisely square and opposed in Mercury, the ruler of his sun sign. And where is Mercury at birth? The 12th sign, which is the place where secret sex stuff happens. I'm getting more suspicious. But could there be more? Well, that transiting Venus is in early Capricorn in the 3-degree range, so it's not quite wired in by exact degree, but it's already getting pretty darn close to activating the Access Hollywood T-square from the same place as Pluto. And if you see it as traveling together with Pluto, the midpoint puts that force in the 6-degree range, which makes it a nice hook to the 6-degree position of his natal Eris, which fits really well. And now look at the transiting Jupiter, which is natal ruler of his 5th of fun and 8th of other people's money, but also known to be the primary house of sex itself. It's transiting through the 12th of secret sex and fun, and though 20 degrees seems a little too far from the Saturn-Venus conjunction to allow us to use it as incriminating evidence, but then we look at our ephemeris and what do we find? That it was exactly stationary right around when this event is alleged to have happened. Remember that stations hyper-intensify the energy of a planet, or, stated in practical terms, the Donald was intensely drawn to something about this house around this time, and I can tell you for sure it wasn't to an ashram, which this house also rules. But if you know your astrology, you realize it's a perfect fit for a sordid scene in a hotel room with hookers. And, to cap it all off, and even more to the point, and in my opinion, sealing the deal, look at that moon in the 26-27 range of Capricorn, opposing his 12th house Venus. Birth moon comes from the house of fun, and rules the house of secret fun, and is now transiting in opposition to a planet in the house of secret fun. My suspicions are increasing even more. In fact, they're bursting at the seams. You know what? Maybe no tape was made, but the orange menace was there. I think something approximate to what has been alleged took place, and though perhaps he will never pay a price for this gross indiscretion, the astrology convicts him. Period. Game, set, and match. This video is to respond to a number of comments that I saw in yesterday's PP tape video. The one that most caught my attention said they felt confused because they had heard Michael Cohen, Trump's ex-lawyer fixer, say in one of his podcast episodes that there is no PP tape, and if there were, he surely would have seen it or perhaps know about it or whatever. Well, I'll tell you, I like Cohen's podcast a lot. I think he's a smart guy who has done an admirable job of self-redemption, and he does attract great people to his podcasts. Matter of fact, in his latest, he is talking with Watergate lawyer John Dean, and it is yet again another terrific episode. But what he says about the presence or absence of a tape or film or whatever that might have caught the episode is not nearly enough to dissuade me. For one thing, he was his lawyer and fixer, but it doesn't mean he knew what Trump was up to every minute of the day, much less at night in a foreign country. And for another, and more importantly, perhaps I myself contributed to the confusion by putting tape in the title, since I actually don't mention tapes or recordings, focusing instead on the fact that the astrology seems to point to something dirty, unsavory, kinky, taboo, whatever, that looks to have happened that night. I would also say he may or may not have been recorded, but if there is a tape or a recording, it is highly unlikely Trump would have anything to do with that. The man is reckless and often behaves unwisely, but I doubt he would be interested in filming or taping himself at a golden shower event. It would make a lot more sense that something or someone related to the Russian government and Putin would have made the recording so they could later hold it over Trump. However, again, I don't know that for sure. What I do know is the astrology says something down and dirty was afoot. I will tell you, though, that I studied Trump's reaction back in 2017 through the way he responded to reporters, and my feeling is he knows something happened that night that he doesn't want to come into the light. Remember when he said with a straight face that he could have never done it because he's a germaphobe? Sure, Donald, sure. That logic does not exonerate you. It's very similar to when you say you're the least racist person I'll ever meet. And then added to that, we have Michael Cohen's statements that they've attended other golden shower events, I believe in Las Vegas. And if that's true, why would it be so unusual he would have done the same thing in Moscow? Moreover, there is Jim Comey, the ex-FBI director, stating unequivocally that Trump had asked him multiple times about the pee-pee story and to help him lift the cloud, whatever that means. Why was Trump so concerned about this? Unless it's because he thought there might be something to it. In any case, I'll finish by saying that all I can say with confidence is the astrology does point very strongly to some kind of secret sexual event, and that Trump's squirrely behavior and lame excuses suggest something happened that he doesn't want known. But of course, if a record of that November 8th, 2013 ever surfaces, great, all the more fun. There'll be no complaints from me. I'll start by saying that these images are from a very progressive news outlet, and so I will ask the viewer to do their own due diligence in the form of cross-referencing through other outlets or through whatever other form of research, outer or inner, that they deem valid in order to decide whether the report is credible. However, do notice that the leaked documents that are mentioned are said to come from The Guardian, which would generally give this story some credibility. Now, true or not, in keeping with the name of this channel, I thought I would alert you to this news release and tell you that the first article strongly implies that Russia knew Donald Trump to be a vain and unstable misfit, and true to form, as well-known USA adversaries were therefore very interested in helping him to become president. And the second article mentions a meeting of Russia's National Security Council referring to certain events, in quotes, that took place during Trump's non-official visits to the Russian Federation territory in the years before entering politics, which of course sounds a lot like what the Russians call kompromat, something they can weaponize to blackmail you with. And now, in an almost expected true-to-form outcome, the internet speculation is that the PP tape incident is likely to be true. Also, I'm pretty sure that if you show this information and timing to most astrologers who know their stuff, well, you'll get a lot of raised eyebrows.